My name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. It is that time again where I sit here and very, very poorly explain the plot of a bunch of books. And it is my August wrap up. So it is kind of crazy that we're already in September. I feel like that's just a thing that everybody says when they do their wrap up videos, but it's like, it's true. Like, how is it already September and I have a million more books that I'm supposed to read this year? I don't know. That is a problem for future me. Anyways, we're going to talk about what I read in August. In August, I read 12 books, which is a little bit lower than what I typically read, but a still pretty good number. The reason this month was so much lower is because I was moving. I moved from Colorado to Florida at the very, very beginning of August, so I wasn't doing a lot of reading, but I was able to still pack in a very good number of books. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Actually, before we start with my August books, in my July wrap up, I actually forgot a book. I don't even know how, but one book that I read in July that I forgot in my wrap up was Burlington by Heather Dixon. That is a suburban type of thriller about this woman who moves into this new community where it's very much like, a lot of people compare it to Stepford Wives, which I've never read or seen, shockingly, because it sounds like something that I would really, really enjoy, so I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. So it's kind of like the same vibe, where it's like this very, very nice suburban neighborhood. All the housewives are very nice and like looking perfect all the time and taking care of their husbands, that sort of thing. So this new family moves in and the husband gets a job. They have 2 children, I believe, and the wife starts to get in with all the other housewives there. And then things get weird when one of them goes missing and she's trying to unsolve this mystery. That book I gave 3.5 stars, I believe. I think it was pretty good. It was a very solid thriller. It just kind of felt a little flat to me, where it was like, it was entertaining enough, but it wasn't anything where I was like shocked and sitting on the edge of my seat while I was reading it. So that was July. That's a book that I forgot. Now we're getting into the August books. So the first book that I read in August was Only the Stains Remain by Ross Jeffrey. This, I believe, is extreme horror. I'm not totally sure. It's kind of like a revenge horror novella about this boy who was abused as a child by his uncles, and as an adult he makes it his plan to get his revenge on them, and he basically finds these people and does terrible things to them and gives them a taste of their own medicine. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was good, it was entertaining, it was a very heartbreaking story, a very good like revenge story if that's the type of book that you're into. Some of the writing for me felt a little bit repetitive, and it wasn't anything super crazy that's gonna really stick with me forever, so that is why I gave it 3.5 stars. Alrighty, the next book I read in August was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a apocalypse book where there's basically this pandemic that happens and really affects a lot of people, kills a lot of people, and it's just a very, very dangerous illness. So we are following certain survivors as they go through this post-apocalyptic world, and it was very, very interesting and I feel like the writing was so good. I'm definitely going to check out more of her books. I know she wrote Sea of Tranquility, which is very, very popular. I also might have to check out the series on HBO. I don't know. Have you guys seen it? Is it good? We're basically just following these people in this post-apocalyptic world, and I just thought the writing was fantastic, the storytelling was great, the characters were written so well that you could just really connect to all of them, and I ended up giving this one 5 stars. I just thought it was overall just a fantastic read. Next, I read Mayfly by CJ Lead. This book I ended up giving 2 stars. I feel like I'm in the minority there. I have seen so many horror lovers loving this book, and it just wasn't for me. Basically, this is I don't know if it's extreme horror, but it's like disturbing, like graphic horror about this girl, Mayfly, and it's basically like American Psycho, but female, is what everybody calls it and what everybody compares it to, and I totally understand because you read the book and there's a million references to American Psycho. So it's like, well, obviously people are gonna compare it to that because you're kind of pushing that, you know? I don't know. I found this book to be boring. Very, very boring for like most of it. Just none of it hit. I actually almost DNF'd, and then I ended up skimming over most of the middle section to get to the end because I heard the end is where it gets really unhinged and a lot of the horror comes in. And I will say it does get very messed up and disturbing and crazy and gruesome at the end, which is the whole reason I was reading it to begin with. So I did enjoy the end of it, but the whole rest of it I was bored and I just didn't really care about what was going on. So that one was a miss for me. Next, I read Heartless by Elsie Silver. I have been wanting to try out the Chestnut Springs series for a very, very long time. I don't read romance very often, but I am trying to get a little bit more into it and find some romances that I like, because every once in a while there is one that I enjoy, and I want to enjoy more of them. This, however, did not hit for me. I gave it 3 stars. I really was expecting like a much more cute and like Western country boy, like cowboy romance, and it was that, but it was also not that. I don't know. I didn't feel emotionally connected to any of the characters. I didn't feel their emotional connection that they had for each other. I felt like a lot of their relationship and their attraction was physical, which is totally fine if that is the type of romance that you like to read, but for me personally, I wasn't about it. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was okay. Didn't think it was anything great. I will go on to read at least the next book in the series and then decide from there if I want to continue on. I don't know. But I just didn't really care for that one that much. The next book I read in August is Once There Were Wolves. This I gave 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this one. Basically, we are following this woman who is a part of this team that's reintroducing gray wolves into this land in Scotland, and there's a lot of pushback from the community there because a lot of the people there are farmers and they have livestock, and they're scared that the wolves are gonna kill their livestock and maybe get to their children and just cause a lot of destruction. So we're following that plot line of her reintroducing these wolves, dealing with the pushback, and then a man turns up dead. And so obviously everybody's gonna assume it was the wolves that did that. So we're kind of following her in her quest to protect these wolves and protect their name and make sure that they can stay safe on this land and that they don't get thrown out or killed by the community. So it was a very, very like emotional and just way more of a deep story than I was expecting. I knew it was gonna be deep. I've read Migrations by the same author. Fantastic. But it just hit me a lot harder than I was expecting. I don't know. There was a lot of gore and a lot of violence, a lot more than I was expecting, which I guess looking back, it does make sense. Like, it fits into the story very, very well. I don't know. I think this author just has fantastic writing, and I really hope she comes out with more books along this line of this and Migrations. I think they're both fantastic reads. This one I gave it 4.5 stars. It didn't quite fully hit for me, but it was still a really, really good read, and I would highly recommend it. Next, I read A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. This is marketed as a thriller, but I don't know if it's really very thrilling. Basically, we are following this couple, and they have a very rocky, kind of toxic relationship where they're together and they're not together, and they're just doing all these dramatic things to one another, and we're just following their relationship. They get back together in the timeline that we're following, and we are trying to piece together something that happened in the past. We know that at some point in the past they had a really, really bad breakup and something bad resulted from that night. So we don't know what it is, but we're following them as a detective is like digging deeper into the story, and she's trying to solve this mystery and how this couple is going to deal with it and protect their secret of what happened that night. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I can't even really tell you why. Like, honestly, nothing really happens in the book. There's a lot of different side characters that are mentioned and kind of brought into the mix and I don't know if anything really, like I said, nothing really fully happens. It's not a thriller, it's not really a mystery or anything. There is some information that is kept from the reader, but not enough that you're like, I don't know, just the way that you want to feel when you're reading a thriller. Like, you're not going to get that from this, so don't expect that. But I thought it was entertaining, like, it held my attention. The relationship between the two was very interesting, very dramatic, and overall I did give it 4 stars, but I can't really explain why. Then I read The Broken Places by Blaine Daigle. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, I do apologize. This is a horror novel. It is like a folk horror. Basically, we're following this man. His father and his uncle have both suddenly died recently. So now he is together with 2 of his very close friends, and they are going to his family's cabin in this very secluded, like, forested area. This cabin is right next to a very, very small town, and he used to go there a lot with his father and his uncle when he was a child. So he's got a lot of memories there, and once they get there, a lot of strange things start to happen, specifically with the animals just acting very, very strange in this area. I do believe this is a debut novel, and I'm definitely gonna look for more things from this author. I thought the writing was great, the atmosphere as well of this whole, like, very snowy, forested, secluded, quiet, creepy area. I thought it was written so well. All of the characters, it is very easy to connect with them. They have so much, like, emotional depth and traumatic things that have happened to them in their past that it's very easy to really connect with them, and then it makes you actually care about what's gonna happen to them in the story. I loved the horror elements. There is some freaky body horror in here, horror involving animals, small town, kind of like folklore, ritualistic type of thing. I don't know. I know that I enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I would highly recommend if this is the type of horror that you're into, but I would say go into it knowing, like, as little as possible and just really let the story carry you away. After that, I read Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This is a book about a woman who gets a nannying job taking care of 2 children who have this strange condition where they just catch on fire when they get too upset. So it sounds a little silly and a little fun, but it's also got a lot of emotional depth to it as we are seeing the relationship between these characters develop, this woman and these children that she's taking care of, and you can see just the way that she really cares about them because everybody else has kind of left them alone and never really paid much mind to them because they have this condition and maybe they're too much work to take care of. So she really takes them in and develops a very strong bond with them. It was definitely very sweet and heartwarming and just a very feel-good type of read, but also had humor and, like, ridiculous, silly little elements to it. I gave this book 5 stars. I would highly recommend, if you haven't read it yet, go and pick it up. The sun just, like, went behind a cloud or something, so if the lighting just got really off in here, I apologize. Anyways, the next book I read is Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko. I was so excited to read this book because the Girls Like Girls music video, myself and I'm sure plenty of you guys out there know that that was like an iconic moment, especially as a woman that is not straight. It was just the music video, the song, you just had to be there. So I was stoked when I found out that Hayley Kiyoko was writing this book based off of the music video and based off of the song and the girls' relationship. However, this book just was not what I expected it to be. I ended up giving it 2 stars, or 2.5 stars. I think I gave it 2 stars. I feel like the writing was very, like, amateur. And I know that Hayley Kiyoko is a musician. She's never written a book before, but it just felt so bad at times and so cringy. Just the writing itself, the way that the characters were written. I know that they're teenage girls and they're gonna be a little bit crazy and dramatic, but it was just so unrealistic and just, I don't know another word to use besides cringy. just at times it was just cringy and it kind of had me rolling my eyes. So writing aside, as far as the plot goes, it was very much an insta infatuation between these two girls. Like Coley is one of the main characters and Sonia is the other main character. Coley just moves into this new town and she meets Sonia and this group of friends, and then they develop a romance from there. However, it just was very much like the first second that these two girls saw each other, they were like obsessed with each other, and then they developed their friendship a little bit more, and then they like had a romantic relationship, and then they were like, oh, I hate you, and then they were like, oh, I love you, and it just kind of like everything happened so fast and so very unrealistic. I feel like if the story is supposed to be like a coming of age type of thing about these girls figuring out what their sexuality is, it just felt very strange to me that they were immediately like, oh my god, I love you, and not like kind of questioning it within themselves. I don't know if that makes any sense. The book did have some redeeming qualities though. Coley had a very interesting relationship with her father and a very interesting past with her mother. Her mother had passed away, so those were some very, very interesting elements to it with that kind of coming of age aspect. But the romance just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. The way that it was written didn't work for me, and I'm really, really sad about it because I wanted to love it so much. Then I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and I never thought I would be saying this. The cat just started scratching at the door, even though she was just in here like 30 seconds ago and then was begging to be let out. Anyways, I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Never thought I would say this about a Riley Sager book. Well, I don't know if I never thought I would say that, but I don't know. I wasn't going to read this book at first because I haven't always enjoyed Riley Sager, but I give this one 5 stars. The reading experience for me was very, very similar to how I felt when I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams, where I was like just so excited to read the book and to finish it and find out what happened. I was gasping, I was talking out loud to myself while I was reading. There were a couple points where I had to put it down and just sit there and think about everything that had happened and what was coming together. Overall, it was fantastic. If you guys don't know what this book is about, we are following this woman who works as a caregiver, and she gets a job caring for this woman that lives in this house up here on the cliffs by the ocean. And this woman is kind of a local legend, kind of like a Lizzie Borden type situation, where in the past her whole family was found murdered and she was the only one that was still alive. So naturally, people assume that she's the one that killed everybody, but they could never actually prove it. So now the woman just lives as kind of a recluse in this house up here. So now this woman that we're following, the caregiver, is going to take care of her, and slowly she begins to uncover the mystery. There were maybe 1 or 2 things that I guessed, but a lot of things took me way off guard. So if this is your sign, if you haven't read this yet, if you've been debating it, take it from me. I think you should read it. If you enjoyed The Last Word by Taylor Adams, or just thrillers in general that are like that, where they like throw so many different things at you that it's like your mind is kind of going all over the place, I would definitely recommend this. Also, the atmosphere of like big creepy mansion falling apart on the side of the cliffs by an ocean, like, I don't know, the atmosphere was just fantastic. Definitely recommend. I think this was my top book for August, which gets even crazier because I was not going to read this. I was going to pass on it, so I'm so glad I decided to read it. Next, I read Choke by Chuck Palahniuk. This book is basically about a man, Victor, who really what he does almost as a living, like just to get money, is he goes to fancy restaurants and pretends to choke on the food, gets somebody to save him, and then that person feels so bad that they keep in touch, and he kind of guilts them into sending him money all the time, and that's just how he gets his money and how he lives. There's a lot of other side plots happening in here though, specifically with Victor and his mother. His mother now lives in a nursing home and is not doing so well, and he's trying to figure out some things about the truth of his past. So that was a very, very interesting element of it as well. I gave this book 4 stars. This is another one that I can't even really tell you why I gave it 4 stars, except that I was entertained. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed where things went at the end. There was like a little bit of a plot twist with one of the characters in here, which was very, very interesting to me. I don't know. This author, Chuck Palahniuk, his books, I feel like you can go in and you think that you know what they're going to be about, and then they just take you down a totally different road. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but this one I thoroughly enjoyed, and like I said, I gave it 4 stars. And the last book that I read in August was Silent Key by Laurel Hightower. This book is set to come out in October. I did get an ARC from NetGalley to read this one. Laurel Hightower, if you don't know, she wrote Crossroads, which I have read. She wrote Below, which I have not yet read. It is on my TBR though. She's a pretty, not a well-known horror author, but she's a pretty well-known indie horror author. I don't know if that makes sense. She's like a well-known, lesser-known horror author. That probably makes no sense at all, but if you're in the horror community, you've probably at least seen or heard about one of her books. Silent Key is her new upcoming full-length novel. In Silent Key, we are mainly following this woman whose husband has just recently died in a pretty horrific way, and now her daughter is having, I don't know if they're night terrors, she's like sleepwalking, and she's seeing her dead father and speaking to her dead father, and just really freaking out about this thing that is the Silent Key. And she's like, we have to find the Silent Key in order to be safe. So she decides to take her daughter and her best friend, who is like an ex-Russian spy, so he's like very protective of them and very much like knows how to fight and will fight for them. The 3 of them go to her father's ranch kind of in the middle of nowhere in Texas, and they're really just trying to get into a better environment and hope that this will help the daughter kind of heal mentally from the trauma of losing her father. However, that is not what happens. Very, very strange things begin happening at this house on the ranch. They meet one of the neighbors there, and he kind of begins to help them out, and really they are just trying to keep themselves safe from whatever it was that killed her husband in the past. This is a like supernatural ghost horror, so if you're not into that, then you probably won't like this one. I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. What really made the book for me is hello? What's up? You're kind of in the way, you know. She's not gonna stay here. She does not like to sit in anybody's lap. And there she goes again. Okay. Anyway, what really made the book for me was the writing and the way that the characters were written. I can't focus on what I'm trying to say now because there's a cat here. I really enjoyed all of the characters that were brought up in this book, and I really enjoyed the way that they connected together, the bonds that all of the characters had, and I don't know, just all of that, and the writing and the storytelling was very, okay. This is where I draw the line. So it was really the characters that kind of made it for me and made me really, really enjoy the book. I felt like the mystery, kind of the ghost, like supernatural horror part of it really wasn't my favorite storyline. I felt like there was a lot that was missing from that, where it was explained, but it wasn't explained to the fullest. This cat is ridiculous. Like, I saw another reviewer say about this book that it felt like they were reading the second book in a series because there was a lot in the mystery that just never really was given an explanation. We were just kind of like, oh, this is what happened, and that's just how it is. And it was never really fully explained why things were that way. with the mystery kind of ghost story aspect of it. Overall, I would still recommend this book if you have enjoyed books from Laurel Hightower in the past, and if you do enjoy like supernatural kind of mystery type of horrors. I would still recommend picking this up. I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't my all-time favorite, but it was written in a way. Oh my goodness. I don't know if this is gonna be straight now. No, you're ridiculous. It was written in a way that made me want to keep reading it, even though I didn't find the mystery very, very compelling. I don't know if any of that made sense. If the camera is not straight anymore, I apologize. We're almost done, so I don't really feel like getting up to fix it right now. Anyway, those are all 12 of the books that I read in August. If you guys have read any of these, let me know what your thoughts were. If you plan to read any of them after my reviews, let me know. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time.